What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into my channel. So this is a continuation of a 3-part video series, exercise examples at home. And it all focuses on something I like to call groundwork. So in the first video, we talked about floor work. This involves anything sitting down on your butt or lying down on your back. You can see that video right here, right now. Make sure you click to get caught up. Today's video is going to be based on locomotion. This is crawling on your hands and feet. The third video that will come after this one is soft acrobatics, and that involves standing up. All of these 3 containers together is called groundwork. And eventually, over time, we want to be able to flow in and out of all 3 of these containers with fluidity. We want to be able to do improvisational sequences. If we can't use the skills that we acquire, then what's the point of doing them to begin with? So once again, this takes absolutely no equipment. You can do this at your house. All you need is a floor. You can take this anywhere. So for our warm-up, what I'm gonna do today is a little bit of work in our deep squat. So if you want a full version of this deep squat routine, you can actually watch the video link right here. I'll also put all these video links in the description. Hold that for about 10 seconds. We're gonna do a little target tap. As I'm doing this deep squat work, I'm trying to keep my hips as low as I can the whole time. Ideally, I'm gonna do anywhere from 10 to 12 repetitions for each one of these exercises. And on each exercise at the end, I'm gonna make sure that I hold. You can see I'm keeping my head down on this target. For time's sake, I'm not gonna do all 10 repetitions, but this gives you an example of what you can do to help warm up your ankles, knees, and hips, as well as your lower back. Good. So I would do 10 of those. I would hold for 10 seconds on the last rep. Then I would go to the other side. And if you can't get your heels down in the deep squat, you can prop something under your heels, maybe a blanket or some mats. And if you need to use your hands as well to help support you, give you a side view. So let's say you can't really get into that deep squat. You could do something like this. There's always ways to modify. Now for our hands, we're gonna do our 6-point wrist prep. So basically this is 6 different positions that we're gonna do to help stretch out our forearms, which in turn will stretch out our wrists and our hands. So each of these positions you would hold anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It all depends on if things are feeling really tight. So if things are feeling tight, you would hold these stretches for longer. If things are feeling okay, not really feeling much, everything feels cool, you don't really need to stay on it that long. But again, this deep squat rehab and this 6-point wrist prep, you can also see this video right here. So check that out for 6-point wrist prep. These are things that can be done daily. And these are exercise routines that will help condition all the white tissue in your body. So it's not just muscle that we want to adapt and make stronger. It's actually the white tissue. So I'm talking about ligaments and tendons, fascia, cartilage. The reason why these tissues are white is because they don't have as much blood going into the tissue. And because they don't have as much blood going in, it takes this stuff 3 times as long to adapt as regular muscle. So regular muscle takes on average somewhere around 2 to 3 months to create adaptation. White tissue, you're looking at 9 months to about a year. So that means that you need to be doing this stuff frequently every single day for at least a year before you're gonna start to be moving around in upgraded skin. Not skin, but in upgraded ligaments, tendons, cartilage, fascia, all that. And then the final position is our internal rotation. All right, so that takes care of our warm-up. Now, in locomotion, our headquarters is always the deep squat. So this is why we started by warming up the deep squat. When I'm crawling around, as soon as I'm done a pattern, you'll notice that I'm always coming back to the deep squat. So the first thing I want to show you is how to transition from your deep squat into a contralateral crawl. So my transition from deep squat into contralateral crawl can happen a couple ways. The first one is simply just to come forward on your hands and on your feet. I'll give you a side view. So notice how I'm trying to keep my knees slightly hovering above the ground. My hips should be slightly lower than my shoulders. I don't want to have my feet and arms spread out too much. I want to have it bunched up a little bit. Obviously, something like this would be too close. So you want to be feeling stable in this position. So I'm going to push myself back into my deep squat. So once again, when I want to go into that contralateral crawl, I can come forward and then boom, I'm in my starting position. Let's say I don't want to go forward. Let's say I want to go to my left side. What I can do is I can rotate my body 90 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the opposite hand of the foot that's forward. So in this case, my left foot is forward, so that means that I'm going to place my right arm down, and then I'm going to take steps with the opposite hand and foot. I'll go backwards so I can stay in frame. Good. I'm going to go back into my deep squat. So this time I'll turn the other direction. So my front foot is my right foot, so I'm going to place my left hand down, and then I'm going to take steps. As I'm taking these steps, I'm trying to lift and lower the opposite hand and foot, and I want to lift and drop them down at the same exact time. In order to come out of the contralateral crawl, you can do what I've been doing this whole time, where I simply send my center of mass or my hips back by pushing myself. Or if we want to get a little more style, what I would do is I would take my steps, whichever hand is forward, in this case, it's my left hand, I'm going to pull and drag my legs and turn myself 90 degrees. So I'm going to do a few transitions in and out of the contralateral crawl using both variations. Notice with the contralateral crawl, I can go backwards. I can also go sideways. As my hands separate, my feet go together. As my feet separate, my hands go together. So I can go forwards, backwards, sideways, and then I can always come back to my deep squat. So this is how you're going to move around in your locomotion container. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two skills that we can do to tie in with your contralateral crawl. Okay, so the first one, once again, I'm going to start in my deep squat. This is called an ole. So you can think of it as, I like to call it a bit of a mini cartwheel, a baby cartwheel. Some of you might view it that way, some of you may not. But for me, it makes sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I'm moving in this direction to my right, I'm going to place the right hand down on the ground. Then I want to place the left hand. Notice that my hips will lift up in the air. This back leg is going to be the first leg that does a half circle. And I want it to line up with this left hand. And then I'm going to half circle that other leg. So if I'm going to do it smooth, it's going to be hand, hand, foot, foot. My feet are not going to leave the ground. Hand, hand, foot, foot. Hand, hand, foot, foot. So again, this is called our ole. Hand, hand, foot, foot. One more time. Hand, hand, foot, foot. When we're learning all of these patterns, the first thing that we want to do is we want to practice these patterns in isolation. So isolation means that you're going to practice these patterns all by themselves. So that means that with the ole, for example, I would do 5 oles on one side and 5 on the other. When I practice, I just alternate left and right. So that means that I would just do 10 repetitions. This would equal 1 set. I want to do anywhere from 3 to 5 sets. And once again, in this isolation phase, you want to make sure you take enough time to really learn and embody these patterns. So you need to do it for at least 5 to 6 to 8 weeks before we can move on to incorporation. And the same is to be said for the incorporation phase. We want to do the incorporation for another 5 to 8 weeks until we move to the improvisation phase. Okay, so the third pattern that I want to show you now is something that kind of is like a cartwheel again, but now my legs are actually going to go into the air. So this is called our IU. So with the IU, it's going to be the same setup as the ole up to this point, except for now with this back leg, I want to tuck it as much as I can into my butt. And then I want to extend and come up on the toe of my right leg. I'm going to go hand, hand. You can see here, I bend the first leg. As the second leg comes up, it begins to bend, and then that first leg extends out. Hand, hand, bending that first leg. Down. Now, those of you that can't do this pattern fully, you would do what I showed you first. Hand, hand, come up to this point, come on the toe, come down. I'm going to go on the other side. Once again, this is the IU. Hand, hand, lift the hips, flex that back leg to the butt, come up on the toe, coming down. Eventually, when you feel comfortable, you can begin to try to hop yourself over to the other side. Hand, hand, flex, big toe, down and out. So that's the IU. Once again, you want to practice that individually, just like you want to practice that contralateral crawl that I showed you first in this video individually. With something like the contralateral crawl, you wouldn't do it for repetitions, you would actually do it for time. So that means that you would set a timer anywhere from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, and rather than counting out each step, you're going to forget about counting and you're going to work on the quality of each step. And you're going to go until that timer goes off. Once again, you'll do 3 to 5 rounds of that. All right, so now I'm going to start to incorporate all 3 patterns together. Deep squat. Ole. Contralateral crawl. IU. Ole. IU. Contralateral crawl. IU. Contralateral crawl. Ole. Okay. So with the incorporation phase, you want to make sure that you have a set pattern of what you want to do. So let's say every time you're going to do contralateral crawl, then ole, then IU. If all 3 is a little too complex for you, you could just combine the contralateral crawl and the ole. Do that combo. Then you could do contralateral crawl and IU. Do that combo. once you get past that point where you have to stop thinking so much about the patterns and things are ingrained in your muscle memory, then you can go to that improvisational layer where you start flowing in and out of all of those patterns. All right, so we've come to the end of this video, and I haven't said be sure to subscribe to this channel, except for now, so make sure you subscribe if you're still watching. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to link together the material from the previous video into this video. So that means that we need to be able to go from floor work into the locomotion layer. So if you haven't seen the floor work video, I will have a link to it in the description. So make sure you check that out. So from my long sit position, in order to get into my deep squat, I'm gonna come into a 4 pose. I'm then going to plant my front foot just in front of my shin/ankle of this bent leg. From here, I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna sit on this back leg. This is called a fisherman's squat. Now, to get into that deep squat, I'm gonna stab the toe, sinking down into it. This is my tactical squat. And then boom, now I'm in the deep squat and I can crawl, I can ole, I can IU. So let me go back down and reverse, sending the knee and turning my hips about 90 degrees, straightening out the foot so the top of the foot is resting on the ground. Notice I'm always sitting on my leg. And now I'm gonna bring my hips back and I'm gonna go into my long sit position. Okay, so once again, long sit, 4 pose. You can use your hands as much as you need to. I'm gonna plant this front foot down. I'm gonna push myself up onto my foot. I'm gonna shift my body forward as much as I need to in order to stab the toe. And then I'm just gonna push my center of mass back. And my center of mass is my hips. So my hips are gonna push back and I'm gonna enter into my deep squat from there. So that is just one of many transitions that we can start to do as we start to incorporate these separate containers and bring them together. What I'm gonna do for you now is I'm going to do a bit of an improvisational flow, combining the material that I did in the first video, which is floor work, and I'm gonna put it in with this new material, which is locomotion. Here's that transition, up, ole, contralateral crawl. Back down, right into my rotational sit-up, shin box, transition, butt spin. Back into my transition into locomotion, IU. Contralateral, ole, making my way back down into floor work. Rotational sit up, butt spin, shin box transition, transitioning back up into locomotion, ole. So I think you get the point. Once again, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with every piece individually. You want to practice these things in isolation. Some of these patterns, like the ole and the IU, you're going to do for repetitions. 5 reps on each side, 3 to 5 sets. Things like the contralateral crawl, you would actually do for time. So that means that you would do it anywhere from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. Once you start going into your incorporation layer, this is when you have a set order of things that you're going to do. You can still do that for repetition. So let's say you do long sit, rotational sit up, transitioning into locomotion, ole, ayu. You could do that sequence 5 to 10 times, making sure you do left side and right side. Or if you wanted to, you could just do it for time. So that's where it starts to get a little tricky. And that's why it's really important to have a teacher and a coach like me to help guide you through things like that. But there is plenty of material in this video to get you started. These are all examples of exercises that you can do anywhere, at home, on vacation, with your kids. Hopefully you do it with the adults around you. Hopefully everybody gets used to sitting on the floor. It's amazing how something as basic and simple as a floor can be so effective in helping your body increase its function. So make sure you watch the videos that are on the screen. I'm going to be releasing the 3rd video in this series next week. So stay tuned to that. Mini Movement Man saying be kind to one another. Check out these videos. Move well. Peace.